Breaking news coming to us in just the last few seconds. We are hearing that the French far-right figurehead Jean-Marie Le Pen has died. That is coming in reports from his family to the AFP news agency. That news just in that the far-right figurehead Jean-Marie Le Pen has died. He was a president of the Front National, National Front Party from 1972 through to 2011. He was a former presidential candidate in France. That mantle taken on by his daughter Marine Le Pen. He was born in 1928, and the news just into us that Jean-Marie Le Pen has died. One of the best known and most controversial political figures in France, known around the world. That image there with his daughter Marine Le Pen. And during his political career, he saw a growth in votes for the far right in France. As I say, he was born in 1928. He founded not only was leader, but founded the National Front political party, representing the main right-wing opposition to the country's mainstream parties from the 1970s until recent times, but a very controversial figure, accused by his opponents of xenophobia. And just before we continue with our lead story, a recap, if you're just joining us, of this news coming into us that the French far-right figurehead Jean-Marie Le Pen has died. That has been confirmed by his family to the AFP news agency. He founded and led the National Front Party. That was from the 1970s, 1973 through to 2011, and was a former French presidential candidate, something, of course, as I mentioned a second ago, which his daughter Marine Le Pen also aims to become the president of France, certainly towards the end of his time leading the party. And in more recent years, with Marine Le Pen, there has been an uptick in votes for the National Front in France. And he, of course, is probably one of the best known French political figures from the 1970s, since the formation of the National Front. A vocal opponent of immigration. He sought to curb immigration into France and sought bans, for example, on the building of additional mosques in France. And this news just coming in that he has died. And I believe we have a VT for you now on the life of Jean-Marie Le Pen.
To his supporters, Jean-Marie Le Pen was a realist and a patriot. To his political opponents, a racist provocateur. In 2002, campaigning against immigration in the European Union, he won the biggest victory of his career, reaching the second round of the presidential elections.
Énorme surprise, Jean-Marie Le Pen semble...
Yes, I am ready to win. If the French people want, win also.
The former paratrooper was defeated in the final round of voting, but it felt like a victory. He brought his populist beliefs into mainstream French politics. Many reeled in shock. He was born in Brittany, the son of a fisherman. Orphaned as a teenager, he studied law before joining the French Foreign Legion, where he served in Indochina and Algeria. There he was accused of torture, allegations he always denied. He set up the National Front in the 1970s, having lost an eye in mysterious circumstances. As its leader, he ran for president 5 times. In 1984, he won a seat in the European Parliament.
I'm very glad. because it's a great victory for the French right and a great defeat for the left.
He was accused and convicted of inciting racial hatred. Anger sometimes boiled over. He said that people with AIDS should be forced to isolate and argued Nazi gas chambers were just a detail of history. Those comments eventually saw him expelled from the party he founded. As a new leader, his daughter Marine tried to improve its image. Jean-Marie Le Pen insisted he was simply a man who loved his country. His uncompromising views deeply offended millions, but they did much to shape post-war French politics.
So recapping for you, if you're just joining us, the news coming into us in the last few minutes that the French far-right founder and former leader of the National Front, Jean-Marie Le Pen, has died at the age of 96, formerly a presidential candidate. His mantle has been taken on by his daughter, Marine Le Pen, but an extremely well-known figure both in France and beyond. And let's go to our correspondent in Paris, Hugh Schofield now, and just picking up on the last point that Daniela Ralph was mentioning in her report. And, to what extent do you think Jean-Marie Le Pen has shaped politics in France?
Well, I know what he would have said were he still alive, which is to say that a lot of what's happening in France and in Europe today bears out the warnings that he was making 30, 40 years ago. You can agree with that or not agree with it, but undoubtedly that's the view that he would be putting out, that worry about immigration is now mainstream, that his warnings about what would happen if Islamism was allowed too free a reign in France and Europe, that's happening. It's now possible to articulate views about worries of immigration and not be automatically typecast as he was as a racist. So he would say there's been great progress in the direction of his views, which were avowedly nationalist, based on the idea of nation states being able to control their own borders. At the time, of course, he was absolutely beyond the pale. And I think that the legacy of Jean-Marie Le Pen is maybe one of a sort of totally failed political career, because he didn't actually get anywhere himself. And his life, his political career, was really a succession of provocations, which meant that whenever he came close to power, it came to nothing. It all fell apart, almost as if that was what he wanted, that he didn't really want to get power. All this stuff, this kind of barrack room humour, which he loved to indulge in, particularly that awful quotation about the Holocaust being a detail of the Second World War. Very, very obviously, it wasn't. He cleverly and sensibly wasn't denying the Holocaust. He was just being offensive, and that's what he liked being. To the point where, when he became an old man, his daughter and the new generation, while agreeing with his general nationalistic views, decided that he was a liability and that he was doing more harm to the cause than good. And that was why, she, in a very bitter confrontation with him, let go of him 10 or 15 years ago now, and let him live out his years in a bit of a wilderness.
Hugh, thank you very much. Hugh Schofield in Paris. So that news just coming in the last few moments that the veteran French far-right politician Jean-Marie Le Pen has died in France. He was 96. He was the founder and for many years the leader of the National Front.